Welcome to the Old Fashioned Masonic Podcast, where we talk all things Freemasons while drinking an old fashioned. I'm Brian, and today we're going to talk about a story that you may not have heard. We've all heard of the Duke, John Wayne, right? Historical cowboy figure. A lot of movies, 170 films nearly. Joseph Stalin, a communist, did not like the stance that John Wayne had and decided to, you know what, let's get rid of him. So before we jump into that story, just like we do on every episode, we talk as much about the man as we do the Mason. So for those who don't know, John Wayne was not his birth name, right? It was Marion Robert Morrison. John Wayne sounds a little bit more like an action star, so I don't know if you wanted to go around and say, this is my badass friend Marion. So he was born in 1907. He played football at USC, but then he was injured body surfing. Mentioned a little bit earlier that he starred in around 170 films, countless awards and nominations, and in 1960, he received his star on the Hollywood Hall of Fame, the Walk of Fame for Hollywood. So before we get to go into how Stalin tried to have him assassinated, let's talk a little bit about the Duke as a Mason. So he was drawn to the organization throughout his life. He grew up a member of the Glendale DeMolay chapter in California. Later in life, at the age of 63, he decided to follow in his father's footsteps and become a Freemason. John Wayne's Masonic Lodge now is the Marion McDaniel Lodge No. 56 in Tucson, Arizona. After he became a Master Mason, he went on to become a member of the York Rite, then joined Malaikah Shrine Temple in LA, and then as well as becoming a Scottish Rite Freemason. So that's a little bit about the life, just kind of a touch of the personal and Masonic life of John Wayne. But let's talk about this historical rumor that, and we're going to leave it to you after this. Do you really think it's a rumor, or is it a fact based on the information we're providing? So Stalin, communist, considered assassinating John Wayne because of his anti-communist views. He was very outspoken, John Wayne was, and it eventually caught Stalin's attention because of the popularity of John Wayne. John Wayne allegedly ordered the NKVD, the Soviet secret police, to carry out an assassination. So again, there's been some folks that say it's a rumor, but the story gained traction in part due to John Wayne's telling of the story. So let's add some things in here for you so you can tell us what you think. So as far as Stalin, he was ruthless to maintain control of the Soviet Union. He implemented processes that forced collective agriculture. He caused a lot of widespread famine and just deaths of millions in the 30s. It's just fascinating. Additionally, his Great Purge in the late 30s resulted in the elimination of his perceived enemies through different labor camps. Stalin was deeply suspicious of anybody that opposed him, and which really created a lot of paranoia throughout his reign. He had focused just on absolute power and wanted to shape this post-World War order. So again, he was ruthless, and the idea that he would consider an assassination of an anti-communist, it really aligns with the patterns that we know of Stalin. So I'm going to pop over to John Wayne here a little bit more. He was very, very active in his views against communism. In fact, as part of the anti-communist kind of counteroffensive, John Wayne worked for the OSS, the CIA, in a temporary capacity at one point during World War II, after the tensions between the U.S. and the Soviet Union just became really crazy. So they used John Wayne's popularity to speak against communism, which ultimately help that campaign for sure. So much of this, the story we're going to talk about, there were some rumors, but we're getting ready to add some sources about the assassination attempt. So yes, Stalin did try to assassinate John Wayne twice. So the first part of the story, Stalin made this threat known in one of his biographies. In addition, author Michael Munn, he was an author of John Wayne's biography, The Man Behind the Myth. And Wayne himself told Munn that his stuntman, Yakima Canutt, actually saved his life. So Munn went to talk to Canutt. It's like, what is he talking about? How'd you save John Wayne's life? So apparently in 1949, the FBI caught wind of this Soviet plot to kill John Wayne, and they came to LA to inform him. So when John Wayne found out, he did, one, something only John Wayne would do, and two, something that seems a little Hollywood. So when John Wayne was told about the agents coming to kill him, rather than to go off in hiding, they hatched a plan with the FBI and even his screenwriter, James Grant, to kidnap the assassins before they could execute their plot. So who they believe were KGB agents made their way to John's office under their prepared identities as FBI agents. So the KGB were going to pose as FBI agents to come in and talk to John Wayne. Well, when they walked in the office, they found John Wayne and the real FBI agents waiting there. So Wayne and the FBI agents took these Soviet agents to an abandoned beach and staged what they were going to make the KGB agents seem as a mock assassination. So seems harsh, right? But think about the time. And frankly, what's fair is fair. So at this point, the agents were tripped out, and eventually they turned into FBI informants. So let's give you a little bit further proof. Orson Welles, he's a fellow actor. If you haven't looked him up, if you are those of a certain age, go look him up. Very famous actor. He did not like John Wayne, and he wanted to do anything he could to discredit him. So Orson Welles heard of this story and found out that it was true, but then talked about another story where Stalin tried to assassinate him a few years later. So while John Wayne was working on Hondo in Mexico in 1953, there was a scuffle with a local communist cell. So here's what's unclear. Stalin died a little bit earlier in 1953. So what was unclear was this another order, or was this a leftover order that Stalin had, and this group was just kind of acting on their own since Stalin had passed away, and there's going to be this one last hurrah, right? So because Stalin was dead, John Wayne suspected Khrushchev, Stalin's replacement, of continuing this effort to kind of knock him off. But Khrushchev told John Wayne in 1958 that he had actually rescinded the order when he took over as the premier. So that confirms that there was actually an order in place to have him executed. So here's a little bit more to the story that may blow your mind.
However unlikely that sounds, there are multiple reports and accounts from both sides of the Cold War that can confirm the cowboy murdering plot did exist. And in actuality, from Stalin's perspective, he had pretty good reason for wanting the American Western icon out of the picture. It has been said many times that America's greatest export is culture. While that may not exactly be true when looking at an accountant's spreadsheet, there's little room to argue that American pop culture, specifically American movies, influence and end up representing how America is viewed by other countries around the globe. Even though Stalin was the iron-fisted communist ruler of the Soviet Union, he loved the cinema. So much so that he had a private theater in each of his residences during his lengthy time in power. And he'd watch films whenever he could squeeze it in between plotting global domination and murdering hundreds of thousands of his own citizens. That being said, a great deal of the American cinema Stalin would have been watching in the 1940s and into the early 50s, however ironically, would have been American westerns, which were in their heyday during that exact time period. Of course, no classic American Western star was more popular or more prevalent than the Duke himself, John Wayne. Not only was John Wayne the quintessential image of the American cowboy on screen, something that Stalin would surely despise, but John Wayne in his personal life was basically that same cowboy, and was outspoken about his hatred for not only communism, but any sort of leftist talk whatsoever. These personal politics would of course place him squarely at odds with Joseph Stalin. It's unclear if Stalin ever sat down to specifically watch a film starring John Wayne, but what was reported to John Wayne biographer Michael Munn is that the Russian filmmaker Sergei Gerasimov, who attended a peace conference in New York in 1949 where John Wayne was also present, is the one who initially told Stalin about Wayne's popularity and his decidedly anti-communist beliefs. It was this report from the Russian filmmaker that made Stalin decide to have John Wayne killed. His extreme popularity combined with his anti-communist sentiment was dangerous to Stalin's cause. Who reported all of this to Michael Munn? Orson Welles. Knowing that, you're right to be skeptical that any of this actually happened, considering that this is Orson Welles.
Ah, the French champagne has always been celebrated for its excellence. There is a California champagne by Paul Masson, inspired by that same French excellence.
However, Michael Munn stated, quote, "Mr. Welles was a great storyteller, but he had no particular admiration for John Wayne. He also said that Welles had offered the story without prompting, and that his sources were excellent." So Orson Welles wasn't just making this up. This really happened. So how did Orson Welles hear about the plot to kill John Wayne? According to him, a prominent Russian filmmaker, Alexei Kapler, who himself was imprisoned for an affair with Stalin's 16-year-old daughter Svetlana, had told another Russian filmmaker, Sergei Bondarchuk, about Stalin's order to kill John Wayne. Bondarchuk was skeptical at first because it's not every day you hear about a plot from a world leader to kill a Hollywood star, even in Soviet Russia, but after Gerasimov confirmed the story, Bondarchuk told Orson Welles. John Wayne had previously gotten himself into hot water for his openly anti-communist views, because there were a lot of people in Hollywood at the time who were either card-carrying Reds or at the very least were sympathetic to the communist view of the world. Wayne had been threatened by anonymous letters to tone down his anti-communist rhetoric, to which John Wayne went on record with the response, quote, "No goddamn commie's gonna frighten me." That's all well and good, and likely exactly what you hoped John Wayne would say, but things escalated beyond anonymous letters and chest puffing when word came down that Joseph Stalin himself wanted Wayne dead. Soon enough, Orson Welles wasn't the only American who knew about the plot to kill John Wayne. Luckily, the FBI caught wind of it as well. As it's reported by Yakima Canutt, John Wayne's stunt double and close friend, the FBI came to set one day to inform John Wayne about Stalin's plot to have him murdered. And, according to Yakima, quote, John Wayne told the FBI to let the men show up, and he would deal with them. Which, again, is just perfect. Not to be outdone by some commie, John Wayne hatched a little plot of his own with scriptwriter and frequent collaborator Jimmy Grant to abduct his would-be assassins when they came to kill him, drive them to the beach, and stage a mock execution to frighten them. While no one can confirm that that ever happened, what can be confirmed is this. After getting word that 2 KGB agents posing as FBI agents were going to come to the movie studio where Wayne was shooting a movie in an attempt to kidnap and murder him, the FBI, John Wayne, and a few other actors and stunt performers on the movie devised a plan. Then, when the KGB agents did show up to kill John Wayne, entering Wayne's office just as the FBI suspected they would, the actual FBI agents, who were hidden in a room next door, burst in and arrested the Soviet agents. The Soviets were so terrified of being sent back to Russia and reporting to Stalin that they had failed, that they willingly agreed to provide intelligence to the United States and work cooperatively with the FBI from that point forward. Though the story is incredible at best and unbelievable at worst, there is still further proof that Stalin tried to execute John Wayne only to have it thwarted by the FBI and the all-American cowboy himself. Joseph Stalin died in 1953. Years later, when Wayne met Stalin's successor Nikita Khrushchev in a private meeting, he reportedly asked Khrushchev point blank whether or not the KGB hitmen sent to kill him were in fact acting on direct orders from Joseph Stalin. To which Khrushchev replied, "That was the decision of Stalin in his last mad years. I rescinded the order." Though he was now apparently safe from Soviet agents, John Wayne wasn't out of the woods just yet with communists in general. While John Wayne was visiting troops in Vietnam in 1966, enemy snipers fired at him and tried to kill him. One of those snipers was captured and told the powers that be that there was a price on John's head, and he had orders to kill him from China's communist leader, Mao Zedong. In the end, John Wayne versus the commies is the great American Western we never got to see, and the one we never knew we needed.
What did you think of this episode? To continue to promote Freemasonry, hit that like button now. Don't forget to smash that subscribe button and give us a comment. The Old-Fashioned Masonic Podcast, where real Masons talk Freemasonry. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and give us a comment.